Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, I already have the pictures running. You know what? That's fine.
Not that one, though. We're starting... Wait, what are we starting with?
Oh, we're starting... Yep, the other one. This will all get edited out. Where's the thing? Oh, up here. There.
They're all in
videos.
Quick access. What are you looking for?
This.
Oh.
I got it. There we go. You gotta remind me that all this needs to be edited out before I start. Before I start, or when I start trimming things. Whoa. That was trippy. Alright. Okay. Ready?
Is it focused?
God, why do I have to do this every week? Because as soon as I do it once on my hand, it looks fine after that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I gotta sit up.
Now I'm really warm in here. I don't know.
You want to do intro? It's your turn to do intros this week. Okay. Ready?
That's a lot of pressure.
You gotta count down. Oh, hi.
I just went like...
What just happened?
I don't know.
You know how to do intros? You did it once.
Now I'm laughing too much. Okay. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Themes to be Seen. I'm Tara Kostick.
I'm Matt Klaus.
Hi, Nick.
There's more.
What?
There's more to the intro.
I'm not good at intros. I get really shy. I don't know why.
You don't get shy any other time of the show. Regardless, our show focuses on significant works of film, whether it be music videos, movies, what else? Just all sorts of things. And we specifically focus on ones that use acting and symbolism, which the idea that I just said that with the chihuahua head on Sarah Jessica Parker's body right next to me was just the most ironic thing ever. But movies that use symbolism and acting to tell story and undertone.
Mm-hmm. We also feature 2 brand new segments. We have our Scene Again segment, which we go back and revisit movies that we used to love when we were younger, or maybe a movie that, say, Matt loved when he was younger and I had never seen, or vice versa.
Or one we just saw when we were younger and we don't know whether or not it holds up still, but it still looks good.
Mm-hmm. So for this week's Scene Again segment, we'll be discussing Mars Attacks. We also have Themes to be Heard, which we discuss music videos, because a lot of well-known film directors actually started with making music videos. So this week we'll be discussing the Learn to Fly video by the Foo Fighters. And then I'm very excited because we finished our It Follows analysis last week, so this week it means we're starting a brand new movie, and this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Now, I want to interject that one of the reasons we picked this movie is because there's only 2 weeks before our Christmas special, and there wasn't really enough time to do a full hard analysis on a in-depth film. But to pick a good one that's still significant, that doesn't get the appreciation it deserves, I feel like that this is perfect for that.
So with this movie, it is Streets of Fire from 1984. We won't be going as deep into it as It Follows. It's, like I said, it's more of a cult classic. It is music driven, so we just wanted to showcase a movie that we think more people should know about, because it is a well-known director that made the movie. It has an all-star cast and fantastic music. And
one of very few people you'll ever see in pop culture who is banned from the set of Saturday Night Live.
Which one?
Leaving.
Oh yeah. Leaving from the punk group Fear is in this movie.
He's actually really good.
Yeah.
All right. So on Scene Again this week, we both saw this movie years and years ago, and we remembered nothing about the actual like substance of it. But we both thought it was pretty funny.
Bits and pieces, but even back then, I remember thinking like, "Oh, this isn't like a great movie, but it's a good way to pass the time."
Yeah.
I do think rewatching it today made me appreciate it
a little bit more. Yeah, I agree.
Because as a kid, I might have missed a lot of the more subtle humor moments, but and the special effects still hold up really well too.
There's some of them that look really good.
They're like purposely made to look bad, but I still feel like a lot of it held up.
There's some of it like the practical effects, like the miniatures, the like in-camera explosions and stuff like that. That all still looks really good, but I feel like the CGI was purposefully poorly done. And if you look, the little ray gun, it's a bubble blower. It's remember the bubble guns?
Yeah.
That's what that is. Yeah. So like some of it is purposefully ridiculous, and some of it is, purposefully well done, and I think it walked a really fine line.
It's one of those movies, like in the 90s especially, like it seemed like 1 year a bunch of movies with the same genre or plot would come out like all at the same time. Like Mars Attacks was actually written before Independence Day, but the filmmakers of Independence Day heard about Mars Attacks, so they like fought for the Independence Day weekend release, and Tim Burton had originally wanted it to be released earlier than that. So I just remember at that time it just seemed like there was a lot of like aliens coming to Earth kind of movies and just blowing up lots of buildings.
Roland Emmerich do one too? Oh, that was Independence Day.
Yeah.
Okay. But I feel like there's Independence Day, Mars Attacks, and there was another one.
What year did Starship Troopers come out? Was that the
earlier.
Next year?
No, that was earlier.
I don't know. It just seemed like at the time a lot of movies that seemed similar came out. I did see Independence Day in the theater. And I'll tell you why. So my parents actually went to see it in the theater before us, but that scene where they're like in the tunnel and is it Vivica A. Fox? They have the dog, the golden retriever.
Well, yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about. I don't know if it's Vivica Fox though.
I don't remember exactly. I haven't seen Independence Day in forever either, but my mom loved that scene. I'm a big animal lover, and I think I get it from my mom because she has always loved animals too, but so she and my dad went to see Independence Day in theaters, and then they came home and my mom was like, I'm gonna take you kids to see this movie. It was awesome, and there's this one scene with a dog that you're gonna love. So like mostly because my mom wanted us to see the scene where
the dog gets out of the tunnel on its own.
Yeah, they're calling the dog, and you think, oh no, the dog's not gonna make it, and then it makes it just in time.
It was Vivica A. Fox. How did I forget that she was in that movie? She's in it for such a small amount of time, apparently, that I forgot it was even her.
But, so I saw that in theaters. Mars Attacks, I don't think I saw that until it came out on home video. And Starship Troopers came out the next year, 1997.
So, this was probably the only movie I ever saw in theaters with Scott. And it's because, like, if he's going to watch something, it's going to be totally off-the-wall silliness. You know what I mean? He wasn't interested in deep film. He wasn't interested in it. He wanted to be entertained, and that's what mattered. And I think this is the only movie he and I ever went to see together in theaters, which I find this movie has more in common with Attack of the Killer Tomatoes than it does with Independence Day. So if they'd have been able to see these two movies and saw that they were not in any way comparable, really, it would have made a difference.
Well, yeah. So Mars Attacks came out on December 13th of 1996, and that's actually why when the aliens, shoot a lot of people, like the skeletons are red or green, they decided to infiltrate like more Christmas colors into the movie just because of when it was going to be released. But Tim Burton at the time was working on a movie about Ed Wood. I've never actually seen that entire movie, but he fell upon this script and thought it would be like the perfect way to honor like Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space or like other campy sci-fi movies. So this was written by Jonathan Gems. There were actually a lot of like rewrites and stuff, and in the 80s there was a British punk rocker filmmaker named Alex Cox that was trying to make this. And if you've never heard of Alex Cox, he made the movie Sid and Nancy, and he also made Repo Man. The Criterion that I have out there. That's one that you got
that I haven't gotten to see yet, but Sid and Nancy's one of the most tragic films ever made. It's hard to watch.
So yeah, like I'm trying to imagine this like cut like through his vision. Like that would have been so.
It's a completely different movie.
Yeah.
It's not silly. It's not. It might have still been funny, but it would have been very dry. It wouldn't. All the characters wouldn't have been so over the top.
Yeah. But essentially, Mars Attacks was based on these trading cards. And they're just Topps trading cards.
Cards with pictures of different crazy things that would happen during an invasion from Mars. And that's the only way to describe them. Like, I'm surprised we couldn't get any of the images for the thing. But but they were just very pulpy. They looked like the old what were they called? EC comics that like did like Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that. That's what these cards looked like.
And the budget was originally they were trying to negotiate like a $100 million contract because Tim Burton loves like claymation and stop motion and stuff, which he had previously done a lot of work with. So he wanted more like stop motion effects in this movie, and then the budget just kept getting cut. I think the final production budget was like a total of $80 million. So everything is just like computer generated.
Or like I said earlier, just silly. Like a lot of like the props are silly things just repainted.
Yeah.
A lot of the effects are just like the camera turned on an angle and somebody crawled. You know what I mean?
And then at the time, because it had a budget of $80 million, and then they spent another $20 million just on the marketing, and the overall box office budget was $100 million, so it was deemed a box office bomb. But it's a very campy movie, and it does have this crazy like A-list cast that was done purposely because of like the disaster movies in the 70s, like the Poseidon Adventure and stuff like that. Like those movies always had like a group of A-list actors, so they kind of used that same method with the casting on this. And when Warren Beatty was actually supposed to play the president,
and which explains.
I think that's why Annette Bening is in this, because I've always gotten this feeling about her that she
only wants
looks
to work
down on like certain projects and stuff, and like just from seeing her in like award shows and stuff like that, she just kind of always had that attitude, in my opinion. But
like she sees herself as A-list and nothing less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to do a movie like this was kind of surprising, but it makes sense knowing that Warren Beatty was supposed to be in it. And then it came across to Jack Nicholson because he had previously worked with Tim Burton on the Batman movie. And he joked around and he was like, oh, what if I play like every character in this movie? So that's why
he plays two.
He plays two characters in this. He plays the president, and then he plays Art.
Artland.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not, like it's a very obvious joke to the idea that this guy's like a real estate developer mogul kind of guy.
Yeah. And then, of course, the music is done by Danny Elfman. If you don't know who Danny Elfman is...
Where have you been for the past 40 years?
He does so much more than just working with Tim Burton. Like, he's the singing voice of Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. But in the 80s, he had a band called Oingo Boingo. They were, like, this fun kind of party band, like, with a bunch of people. That's a picture of Danny Elfman right there. But he does...
It was like a synth pop group.
Yeah. They have this very famous song called Dead Man's Party.
They also did the theme for Weird Science.
Yeah. But Danny Elfman, like, he's composed the theme to The Simpsons. Gosh, he's done so much. I can't even think of
he did all
everything.
The music for Nightmare Before... Well, almost anything Tim Burton's done.
Yeah,
almost
but
anything.
Actually, while they were making The Nightmare Before Christmas, they started having a lot of creative differences. So then they didn't talk for, I think, like 2 years. And that's one reason he doesn't do the music for Ed Wood. And then they just... like decided to meet up like in a coffee shop or something to make up, and so this movie is like their reconciliation with each other.
And it's obvious, like most of the time Danny Elfman scores from like low end brass sections, a lot of tubas, a lot of French horns.
Yeah.
The boom 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 boom. But
like think of the Beetlejuice theme, like it's very animated. And
then only with this one we get multiple theremins at a time. There's a lot of
yeah.
And it sounds like he really wanted to take his music and make it sound like that 50s B movie kind of sound.
Yeah.
And he pulls it off. He's an extremely intelligent composer. And
yeah. But yeah, there's this great A-list cast. There's a few Tim Burton regulars as well. Like Sylvia Sidney, she's the grandmother in this movie who ends up being like very crucial to the plot, but she was a classic Hollywood actress as well. But Mars Attacks was her final feature film. She was also the lady in Beetlejuice, the like death consultant who smoked and the smoke would come out.
Which anytime, what she was great at was delivering, like her delivery was always so perfect. Any movie that you see Sylvia Sidney in, her delivery gets you every time. And there's a couple of deliveries in this movie that even like at her advanced age, you can tell that she's probably in her mid to late 80s in this movie.
Yeah.
And she's still spot on with her comedic timing. It's great.
Yeah, she sadly passed away about 3 years after Mars Attacks came out. Danny DeVito is in this.
For a minute.
Yeah, it's very weird. He's one of the top billed actors, and I think he only has like less than 2 minutes of screen time total.
Olan Davis is only in it for a couple minutes.
And then Jack Nicholson, of course. We
get a good old fashioned Joe Don Baker sighting in this movie. Woo! if you're not familiar with Joe Don Baker, if you look up his filmography, you'll see that it's very rare he's in the top billed class, the top billed cast, but he always does he's always evil redneck number 1 or something. Like he's always just a kind of a bastard.
It's weird too because going back and rewatching this, it's like, oh wow, like these specific actors have worked together before, like him and Pierce Brosnan, because wasn't he in some of the James Bond movies?
Joe Don Baker?
Yeah.
No.
I thought he was.
There's no way Joe Don Baker was in James Bond movies.
I thought he was. Like, I thought he and Pierce Brosnan had worked together, but
I think he may have worked on other stuff with Pierce Brosnan. That's perfectly understandable. But there's no way they got Joe Don Baker.
I could have sworn I saw that, though. But then, of course, you have Sarah Jessica Parker, and then the TV scene, Willie Garson is one of the corporate guys. And, of course, I've been watching a lot of Sex and the City recently.
She's been rewatching all the way through the entire series. So, if you ever see, follow my streaming, my Twitch. It's just the Klausy. Because if she's out there watching Sex in the City, I'm like, all right, well, I'll just be in the studio streaming. And she'll be like, okay.
But yeah, of course, Willie Garson was also on that show with Sarah Jessica Parker. Like Pam Grier, Jim Brown, Tom Jones.
Jim Brown is great in this movie. I love him in everything.
And a funny thing about Pam Grier, so...
holy shit. He wasn't with Pierce Brosnan. He was in old... That's why I couldn't think of it. He was in... Yeah, right.
Yes!
He was in... He was in old... He was in the...
No, he was in those movies with Pierce Brosnan,
Oh,
too.
he was in GoldenEye. That was his last one.
He
was the original... Okay... If any of you have ever seen Walking Tall, you'll go, okay, yeah, that first action movie with Dwayne Johnson. No wrong. There was a trilogy of movies called Walking Tall with the exact same story, because those movies with Dwayne Johnson were remakes, all starring Joe Don Baker as the main character.
But anyway, I was talking about Pam Grier.
I was excited.
So during... GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies.
I can't.
Thank you, Nick.
Oh, it is. Damn.
But yeah, Tim Burton really wanted Pam Grier in this movie, so he was calling her repeatedly, like, oh, get on a flight, come to LA and audition. But her dog at the time was terminally sick, and she kept, she wanted to do the movie, but she kept declining it because she didn't want to travel. She didn't want to leave her dog. And so after a while, Tim Burton was like, you know what? She auditioned and she got the role, because in the movie, the mom refuses to leave without her sons, and she does not want to leave her dog. So, you know...
Same thing.
She belongs in that role. But... Oh, and then, of course, you have, Lucas Haas and Natalie Portman.
Lucas Haas and Natalie Portman as very young people.
I think this movie was right before The Phantom Menace. So, right before her career was gonna, just take off. Michael J. Fox.
She was gonna be huge no matter what, though.
Yeah.
Jack
Black. That was a funny thing rewatching this, and then I never had realized that the girlfriend was Christina Applegate.
Because she's only in it for 2 scenes. Christina Applegate's in this movie for 2 scenes. Jack Black's in this movie for maybe three scenes.
Yeah. Oh, and Glenn Close. We can't forget
2 scenes.
Glenn Close, and then of course Martin Short, and the female alien was played by Lisa Marie, who was Tim Burton's girlfriend and muse at the time. She was actually the inspiration for Sally in The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Really?
Yeah. But she was a model, and supposedly she met Tim Burton at a Starbucks or something. But yeah, so Lisa Marie was the female alien, and then she was also in Ed Wood. She played Vampira, but then they broke up. She broke up with him after he filmed Planet of the Apes, because I think that was when he met Helena Bonham Carter, and they must have had an affair or something.
Well, there was also like a weird thing going on in especially in Britain film at the time, because you had Helena Bonham Carter, Tim Burton, Kenneth Branagh, and then all the chicks Kenneth Branagh was hooking up with.
Oh yeah. Kenneth Branagh was famously married to Emma Thompson, and he had an affair with Helena Bonham Carter.
Yes, but not just Helena Bonham Carter.
That's
so there's
so sad.
There's like a whole story arc. There's a season of a Ryan Murphy show going on in Britain at that time, which would be actually Ryan Murphy, hit us up, we'll write it. But yeah, so when the movie, we haven't even started talking about the movie itself.
We need to try to start keeping these segments
Well,
shorter anyway, so we don't really have to get like into the plot. I mean, it's pretty simple.
The first insane thing it starts out with is a stampede of burning cows.
And rewatching this too, I was like, wow, like they really are taking a lot of time just focusing on the people. Like, I feel like watching it when I was younger, I remember things getting to it a lot faster, but you don't actually see the aliens for
a good
like a little
30 minutes
while.
Yeah.
They're kind of just introducing all the characters, and there were actually supposed to be a lot more characters in this movie than there actually are. And one funny thing about this, the aliens when they talk and there's that translator that translates their voice to English.
And it does it completely incorrect every time.
Yeah, that was the voice of Roger Jackson, the voice of Ghostface in the Scream movies.
Oh, yeah?
Because of his performance in this movie, he got the audition for Scream.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Which, if you've never seen this, the language that the aliens speak is just at, and it's just there's no sense to be made of it. So
but yeah, it's like some of the scenes in this are kind of reminiscent of like Independence Day, like where they meet up and it's supposed to be this like peaceful communication, and like in Independence Day where they blow up, like all the people are on the top of that building, like welcome to Earth, and they blow it up.
This movie
kind of has like, I don't know, just has a similar sequence.
So what's funny is if Independence Day wouldn't have gotten the July release, and this would not have gotten pushed forward to Christmas, this would have looked like a parody movie. Like, made within 6 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it is so closely paralleled on a lot of the things that they... Because Annette Bening's character...
That makes sense, because at that time, I probably thought that's what this was. Because I was like, oh, wow, like, another alien movie, and there's a lot of, like, similarities, like, they're blowing up Washington and stuff.
Instead of the White House...
At that time, it didn't compute in my mind, like, no, movies are actually time consuming, it takes a while to make a movie, and
that's one of the big things is like and it is a parody because you have the people on top of the building that are like, oh, we're ready for you, and then you have Annette Bening on the back of a car holding crystals. You got like the redneck, so you got which Quaid was it?
Oh, it was Randy.
Randy Quaid being all weird redneck, and then you have Joe Don Baker and what's that actress's name?
Oh, you said her name earlier, Olan Jones.
Oh yeah,
was it?
Olan Davis. Yeah. Right?
I thought it was. I don't know.
It doesn't really matter. She was another 90s character actor, but they're like the guns and country rednecks. which they are the parents to Jack Black and Lucas Haas.
Mm-hmm.
And one is like this super, like, it's this stupid, like, oh, I'm so proud of my boy because he's going into the army to defend the country.
Yeah.
And, like, they build him up as, which, if you look at it from a military perspective, anytime they show Jack Black, he's actually what we would call a shitbag in the army. Like, he's not actually, he moves one road thing, he's not wearing his helmet. He left his helmet and his rifle yards and yards away in a Jeep, and he moves one, like, road sign, and he's like, oh. And, like, to somebody who's not really paying attention to the movie, they go, oh, they're just trying to show him as a... But everybody else is standing at attention with all their gear, and he has to run away to grab his.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea that he gets first shot at the first person to be able to shoot at the aliens, and he pulls the trigger and his magazine falls out. Like that. It's pretty funny. Pam Grier. Oh, by the way, something we didn't talk about. We're watching this movie and this whole storyline about Pam Grier trying to keep her sons in school and keep them at home, keep them off the streets. And I'm looking at these two young guys who are playing these young boys, and I went, "That's Ray J."
Yeah.
And sure enough, it's little Ray J.
And I think the younger son was he in Space Jam? I feel like he was in something else around that time too.
I feel like he was in a few things at that time.
Because when I first saw this movie, I was more familiar with like the younger actors, and then of course Jack Nicholson, because I used to watch so many movies with him. But yeah, it's crazy, like, going back and watching this and seeing all these actors together, and then realizing, like, oh, I thought that person was in this movie a lot more than they are.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to talk about some of Grandma's deliveries. So early in the movie, she gives this really heartfelt delivery because she's in the early signs of dementia. Mm-hmm. And Lucas Haas character, Richie, is the only one that actually cares about her. Everybody else has written her off. You know, she's just kind of furniture. And he goes to drive her back to the home that she lives in, and she's calling everyone Thomas. And the Jack Black's character doesn't care. His name's like Billy Glenn or something.
Yeah.
Jack Black's character doesn't care. He goes, "Goodbye, Grandma. I hope you're proud of me." And he, like, gets on a bus and leaves. And the Richie character is actually talking to her. Like, he's actually, you know, he's just talking to her, like, you know, because he's her friend. Mm-hmm. And he goes, "No, my name's Richie, Grandma." And she's calling everyone Thomas. And she goes, "Oh, I know, Thomas. Richie was always the best one." And it's kind of like, in such a silly movie, it's a little more emotional of a like, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Later on, when the aliens, so alien ambassador is giving a speech to Congress, and then they just start killing everybody, right? Mm-hmm. She has this line delivery where she's laughing and she goes, "They blew up Congress!"
Yeah.
And it is spot on, one of the funniest parts of the movie.
Yeah. The thing about this movie, too, there's not a lot of character development. Pretty much everyone
sucks.
in this movie, they're just like, ugh.
I mean, there is an underlying moral story to the movie, and it's that most people suck. Most people are only out for their own good, their own well-being.
Which makes sense, too, because in this movie, we only see how it affects the United States. Mm-hmm. It's just like the United States is at the very center of it. It doesn't go beyond that. It doesn't show how it's affecting other areas. It's like, no, it's the President of the United States that is just dealing directly with speaking to this aliens. There's no, like, outside
which is especially funny because the movie was made by a Brit. Right? Like, that makes it even funnier. And then if you want to continue with that line that I was on, the people who don't only care about themselves end up being the ones who are the saviors of everyone else.
Yeah.
So eventually, because Jim Brown's character eventually like sacrifices himself to save everybody, and he becomes one of the saviors of the group he was with, which includes Tom Jones playing himself for some reason.
I guess apparently Tim Burton met him backstage at one of his shows and just offered him a role, and Tom Jones was like, yeah, why not? But the final shot of this movie is of Tom Jones. I have no idea why they decided this was the final shot.
Just falconing some sort of golden eagle or something.
And there's like deer around him, and like that's just the final shot of the movie.
He starts singing. It's not unusual to the animals.
I don't know. This movie is just like bonkers.
It's insane, but it was kind of worth a rewatch.
But
I'm glad
honestly,
we watched
like, as bonkers as it is, I still feel like it could have pushed that a little bit more.
I feel like he didn't want to go... he wanted the absurdity of everything else that was happening and the dryness of some of the humor to stay. Mm-hmm. So if you go any crazier with one side or the other, then you're not giving dry humor, or it doesn't fit with...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he was trying to walk a balance that I can understand, because in there are parts of this where you're like, oh, that doesn't seem like it belongs. That doesn't seem like it was in the rest of the movie. Mm-hmm. Like the spaceships just going around, and or the aliens taking a selfie but making sure they time it so that the Taj Mahal is blowing up behind them. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem like it fits in with the rest of the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know, but
eventually,
apparently, Howard Stern on his show back then when this movie came out claimed that he wrote the climax of the movie when he was working at WNBC in 1982. He made like a little comic drawing called Slim Whitman versus the Little Aliens from Mars or something like that. So he said, like, he didn't accuse the movie of anything. He was just talking about it on his show, how he went and saw the movie and he got like freaked out because he was like, whoa, I came up with that exact idea like in the early 80s of aliens listening to Slim Whitman's music and the alien attack being thwarted.
Which I call bullshit. Because while we were watching this, I said that the climax of this film is the exact same as the climax of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Because what saves Earth, what kills the monsters, is the gross high note of an annoying song. In Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, it's a completely fictional song called Puberty Love. And it's supposed to be like a teen heartthrob, like... it's supposed to be making fun of, like, early Donny Osmond. Whereas in this movie... It's called Indian Love Call, which is super racist. But I can't remember the name of the artist. But it's almost like...
In Mars Attacks?
Yeah.
It's Slim Whitman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of a... It's kind of a racist song. But it's also like super yodely. So whenever he starts yodeling, that's when we see it blowing up the aliens' heads. Here's the filmography of that kid, by the way. So, Soul Food, Mars Attacks, he was in Space Jam, he was in The Fan, Waiting to Exhale. So he was around for, he did some big stuff.
But, yeah, so...
Yeah, it was fun. It's worth it. If you haven't seen it since it came out or you've never seen it, it's worth a watch for the fun of it.
It's on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
So...
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I actually need my notes for the next segment.
We'll need to change the pictures, too.
We will. Thank you for reminding me, because I would not have... I'd have forgot. Oh, there it is. forgot what I was doing for a second. You can start.
Okay. So for this week's Themes to be Heard segment, we're going to be talking about the 1999 music video for Learn to Fly by the Foo Fighters, and I cannot believe it is already that old. I remember when that video first came out.
I remember when this video came out, and okay, so there's a lot of times where videos like this will come out, or songs like this will come out, and they'll get played so much that you're sick of them for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are so many songs that if they play from the 90s, that if they play now, I don't even want to hear them because they got played so much when they were first out. This song got played a lot, and I'm still not sick of it. I don't think I could be.
They, at this time, were making really good music videos, and I'll never get tired of watching this music video. It's hilarious.
All of their music videos have been really good.
Yeah. But a little about the song. So, Learn to Fly was the lead single from the Foo Fighters' third studio album called There Is Nothing Left to Lose.
Great album.
It was their first song to enter the Billboard Hot 100, surprisingly.
What? No way!
Yeah, it peaked at number 19.
So, Everlong, The Pretender,
Wasn't The Pretender after this?
I thought The Pretender was on an earlier album.
No, I think that was after.
Oh.
It was their first number one on Billboard's Modern Rock chart, and it set the record for most weeks at number one on Canadian rock charts. It was number one for 13 weeks. The single is certified gold in Canada and Italy, not in the U.S., surprisingly.
Also, the song itself holds the record for most individual musicians, according to like there was a
Yeah, see, Nick said The Pretender was much later, early 2000s.
What? It sounds earlier. They really they do a good job of making themselves sound like whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there was a Guinness Book of World Record breaking thing where like it was 1,000 people met at a football stadium and all were playing sheet music for Learn to Fly at the same time. So, like, the Guinness Book of World Records for event with the most individual musicians, all the musicians were playing Learn to Fly.
I think it was in another country, too, right?
Yeah.
Because they were trying to get the Foo Fighters to come join them, and eventually they did. But it took a little while.
Before we get into the video itself, if you don't know who the Foo Fighters are, then you got some catching up to do. But also, Dave Grohl, original drummer for Nirvana, but also it just kind of floats around in like Hollywood stuff, comedians, and he makes his own like fun projects.
He's the type of person that gets along with everybody, and he knows so much, and like they do so many like I remember when he was the Record Store Day ambassador a few years ago, in the early like 2010s, he made a documentary called Sound City, which is excellent. If you've never seen Sound City, definitely check it out. Didn't he make another documentary? Or I don't know.
If he definitely, and we'll get into this, but he's done a lot. Well, not just him, but all the members of the Foo Fighters have done a lot of musical work with Tenacious D and other acts.
Yeah, but
they don't take themselves too seriously.
This past year, the Foo Fighters, he was the final drummer for Nirvana.
Well, duh.
But this year for Record Store Day, the Foo Fighters put out a Bee Gees cover album. They also have a horror movie in the works that's coming out early next year. He wrote an autobiography this year. They were recently inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame.
Just like last month?
So, yeah, like Dave Grohl has just been like everywhere lately.
And right now, this month.
Oh, yeah.
Every other week, or is it every other?
It's every night. the 8 nights of Hanukkah.
So, for 8 nights, he's putting out a new video covering a different song?
Him and the producer of the Foo Fighters.
Right.
They're doing, like, cover songs of Jewish artists. Like, the first one they did was Stay by Lisa Loeb. And they recreated the video, but then they turned it into, like, this metal
super
song.
Heavy black metal portions of it.
Um,
But it's just Dave's face superimposed onto Lisa Loeb most of the time.
But then the quieter scenes, and he's singing more high-pitched, and he's wearing a dress and the glasses.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't even think it's him. I think it's his face just superimposed on the original video.
No, in the original video, Lisa Loeb wore a plain black dress.
Oh, okay.
And
it's just ridiculous anyway, no matter what.
They covered, like, Jump by Van Halen. They did Amy Winehouse the other night. His daughter, Willow, actually was singing the song.
Like I said, they've all been studio musicians or somehow helped out musically with all of Tenacious D's act, which actually they are all at some point show up in Tenacious D's The Pick of Destiny in different scenes.
Because wasn't Dave Grohl Satan?
He is the devil. Yeah.
But yeah, so they've always made these funny videos. Like, I remember the first Foo Fighters video I saw. It was I think it was Big Me. It was the Mentos parody.
Yes.
That was the first time I saw them, and I didn't know it was, because this was like when they were first coming out, and I had no idea it was, the drummer from Nirvana.
You know the first time I ever saw the Foo Fighters? It was very early 90s. And I was watching Beavis and Butthead with Greg and Kenitha. And the Everlong video came on while Beavis and Butthead were watching videos.
Oh.
That was the first, and I distinctly remember it, and it's the first thing I ever remember of the Foo Fighters is Beavis and Butthead. Oh, these guys rule.
But, yeah, speaking of Everlong, when this video starts, like, we're getting the setup of the video. It's Jack Black and Kyle Gass from Tenacious D, and they have some marijuana.
No, I don't know it, because it says
like a
erotic sleeping powder.
Yeah, but they're trying to hide it on the plane, and you hear this elevator music, and it's actually it's the Everlong elevator version.
I didn't even recognize it until she pointed, because we had watched the beginning of the video probably 2 or 3 times just trying to get ready to start taking notes, and she was like, "Oh my god, that's Everlong." And I was like, "What's Everlong?" And she was like, "The elevator music." And I had to listen to it a couple times, but once I picked it up, I was like, "Oh wow, that's funny." I wonder if they were actually playing that on set, like, for playback.
I don't know.
Because that's funny.
But this video was directed by someone named Jesse Peretz. In the 90s, there was a band called the Lemonheads. I remember them because I think my older brother was a fan of that band, but Jesse Peretz was actually a founding member of the Lemonheads, and he started making music videos back then. I think he actually made a few, like he did the Mrs. Robinson video for the Lemonheads. He does a lot of TV episodes too, like for New Girl and Nurse Jackie. He directed Our Idiot Brother. He seems to work with Zooey Deschanel a lot. They must be good friends. But so he directed this video, and it won a Grammy in 2000 for Best Short Form Video.
Which it totally should.
Yeah. He also directed the popular video by Nada Surf. You know that song?
That sounds really familiar, but I can't.
And I remember this. I remember when Jimmy Fallon came out with his first comedy album, and I saw making the video for his video called Idiot Boyfriend. And that video has Zooey Deschanel in it, so I don't know, they must be like really friendly or something, but he's directed 4 Foo Fighters videos, and this video in particular is like a parody of the airplane movies from the 70s, like Airplane, or like disaster movies like Airport 1975 and Airport 77. And so we get the members of Tenacious D, and at this time the Foo Fighters were just Dave Grohl, Nate Mendel, and Taylor Hawkins.
That's all.
At this particular time. Because by then, I think Pat Smear had already
left.
Yeah. And so Nate Mendel was in a band called Sunny Day Real Estate, I believe. And so they got him. And then Taylor Hawkins, of course, was working with Alanis Morissette, but he wanted to be more part of a band, not just drumming for a solo artist.
And it's funny because they all met, and the story that, because were you there when we listened to that interview? I heard that interview on YouTube where he's like, if it wasn't for the You Oughta Know video, Dave and I would have never met because he just happened to be there checking it out. And then they were all talking and everybody was friendly. There was nothing about like making his own band because Dave was still like kind of getting his stuff all together.
Well, when Dave Grohl like first started making the music, it was just him. Yep. He was like writing all the songs in his house and playing all the instruments and stuff like that, and he didn't want to release the music under his name because he knew people would be like, oh, that's just the guy from Nirvana. So yep. He called the project the Foo Fighters, and then of course he like knew all these like musicians and stuff. And
well, Foo Fighters being World War II slang for alien spacecraft.
Which is funny too, because Dave Grohl is a big B-52s fan. He recently came out with a list of like his top 10 albums of all time, and the B-52s are in his top 10.
Yep. So they throw the drugs in the coffee maker, and then they leave, and all the people on the plane drink the coffee except for the actual Foo Fighters. So we have this heavyset family, and then we have Nate Mendel just being tiny, and he's like a nerdy guy who has to sit between the heavyset family. We have a teenage girl played by Dave Grohl.
That's the thing we forgot to mention. So all the band members play all these different characters.
And themselves.
I crack up just even seeing stills of this movie. But it's a very simple concept, a very simple song too. Like Dave Grohl was recently did an interview with Kelly Clarkson. What's her name? Kelly Clark from American Idol.
Kelly Clarkson.
But she was like reciting the lyrics back to him, and like, this is how I see it, like this is what it means to me, and he's like, I hate to burst your bubble, but this is like the most straightforward song. I really wanted to be a pilot at this time, and I wrote a song about how I wanted to learn how to fly. And she's like dissecting these lyrics, like, you've got the light and the dart. I
didn't know that, and it's great.
He's like, oh, I'm gonna burst your bubble, but it's really a song about how I wanted to learn how to fly.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, so as you can see from the pictures, like, oh gosh, it's so good. They have such a good sense of humor.
And in every video.
Yeah.
In every video. Like you were just talking about the Big Me.
Yeah.
And that's another one that like you watch it and you're like, these guys are so damn funny.
Yeah. But so yeah, everyone on the plane is
they start hallucinating, and
except the young girl, she kind of just disappears.
Well, okay,
so she's in love with Dave Grohl, and like she sees him on the plane, and she's like, she has these like braids and braces, and she's like, oh my god. And then she asks him for his autograph, and she's sitting there
licking her braces. She's like, There's a lot of Dave Grohl licking the front of his teeth in this video.
Like this scene, she looks over and the guy's head turns into a hamburger.
But the only people not drinking on the plane are the actual Foo Fighters.
Yeah, because
they
are drinking.
The only people not drinking the coffee, they're actually drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
They look like they're drinking what looks like gin and tonics.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hey, if you're on a plane, good G&T, that's a way to chill out.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone else has had the coffee and they're all losing their minds.
Including the pilots.
Mm-hmm.
So the pilots start... Which actually, it's really funny when the one pilot, he's flying and he looks out the window and he sees the flight attendant with the tray of coffee looking from the outside of the plane in.
Yeah.
That's a good bit.
Because there's just little moments like Dave Grohl has, like, he'll just, like, blink and it's really funny. Like, he has these really priceless facial expressions. But... People that listen on Spotify... They must have had so much fun.
People that listen on Spotify to this week are going to hate us. They're going to be like, yeah, they just laughed the whole time. But yeah, the video is absolutely hilarious, and you can watch all their... Like, we could just make a series out of Foo Fighters videos.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't even be fair to anybody else. And then at the end, you get Tenacious D... And the air marshals arrest Tenacious D and walk him into the cockpit of the the plane, and they're all doing like this goofy...
It reminds me of Wayne's World. They're just like, excellent.
Well, but before they even bring Tenacious D in there, the one is like, oh, you got a little something on your... And they're all like, ha, 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 ha. They have this like super goofy laugh.
Oh, gosh.
We watched it like 3 times, and like right in a row, like I just rewound it, and it was still funny every time.
So entertaining.
Highly recommend. It's on YouTube. Watch it as many times as you feel is necessary. But that is our themes to be heard. Foo Fighters Learn to Fly.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Now, on to the movie at hand. Whoa, I started a note and literally just stopped mid-sentence.
What does that say?
Yeah, I don't even...
The fire. What?
Oh, that's the end of another note.
Oh.
She doesn't like... Okay, so I don't really... When I take notes, I don't take notes like she does, where she's like very concise, very straight lines. Everything is very guideline.
Like, let's hold up. So this is mine.
Oh, you can't even see there. It's like you can't even see mine because of the.
But, like...
Yeah. Nope. I write most of my notes looking forward and just assuming I'm on the line. Okay, so 1984, Streets of Fire. A rock and roll fable. The beginning.
I just went blank.
The beginning of the movie is a bit of a Star Wars scroll.
Mm-hmm.
It says a rock and roll fable in another place at another time.
Another time, another place.
Right.
So this movie was directed by Walter Hill, who is known. Oh, yeah, the picture package. Thank you. Because I forgot about it, too.
I like that the audience helps.
Yes.
Everybody gets involved. It's fantastic.
So, Streets of Fire came out in 1984 and was directed by Walter Hill, who previously directed
Chungus Pictures,
The Warriors, and 48 Hours.
Oh, he directed 48 Hours?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes sense.
Actually, he had wanted the Blasters to perform in 48 Hours, but they declined, but then they accepted the offer to perform in this movie. But Walter Hill also... We hosted a Midnight Monster movie this past year where we hosted Messiah of Evil with a Bucket of Blood, and Walter Hill had worked on Messiah of Evil. He also was a producer on Alien.
Which also, should we make the announcement for the other thing at the end of this episode?
Not yet. I don't know much about it, and neither do you.
Oh, I was going to pay for it this week.
Oh, well, no.
Okay.
But this was written by Walter Hill and Larry Gross. One thing I really like about this movie, and it is what, that initial scroll says, another time, another place, because just like the Warriors, this seems like a completely alternate reality. There's no, discernible time period.
It doesn't really take place on Earth, but there's nothing like outer space about it.
It's this movie kind of, it mixes the 50s and the 80s together, and you can't really tell what era it's supposed to be, but it feels like its own world. And then of course you have the music and stuff, and
which also the music itself are blends of 50s and 80s music. So if you're also a fan of Batman the Animated Series does this also, where it's either the 50s or the 90s, and I think they do a really cool blending of the two.
So essentially what this is a singer is kidnapped, and her former boyfriend helps to go save her. So it's kind of like a romance, but there's also action in it. And the film's title comes from a Bruce Springsteen song, and the filmmakers were convinced that he was going to let them use it. So they kind of built a plot and a finale around using the song. And then Bruce Springsteen found out they were going to re-record it, and he wasn't really big on that. And then allegedly there were just a lot of copyright issues, and then Bruce Springsteen decided not to let them use it. And then the film producers were like, well, it's a depressing song anyway. So for the opening and closing song, they brought in Jim Steinman, who famously worked with Meatloaf and
on 2 albums.
Yeah, the Bat Out of Hell era. He writes these grandiose, epic songs. But
very dramatic. Steinman's music is very dramatic, and it's all very visual. You can hear Steinman's music and see what the words are meant to make you think.
So he wrote Nowhere Fast, and then the final song, Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young, and I think it took him 2 days. It really didn't take him that long.
Once we talk about that ending song, the idea that he wrote those 2 in 2 days, just personally from me to him, fuck you, dude, because that last song is a work of art. It is a old style rock and roll masterpiece, and there is no reason anybody should be able to write a song that good in that amount of time.
Yeah. So this takes place in a town called Richmond, and there's these different gangs and stuff too. This is one of Willem Dafoe's earliest roles. He plays a character named Raven, and the gang, they're referred to as bombers. They occupy this place called the Battery.
Yeah, there's also different districts of the town that are referred to. So there's Richmond proper, and then you'll hear the names of all these other I think there's 4 districts that are never really explicitly mapped out for you. You just kind of understand, okay, this one is not so good. This one's the better side of town. This is where everybody lives.
It's kind of like in the Warriors, how, all the gangs meet at this one place, and then the main, gang
what was his name?
Spokesperson,
Yeah.
Was it Cyrus?
Cyrus.
Is shot and killed, and everyone blames the Warriors, so the whole movie is them traveling through New York. They have to get back to their territory, but in order to get back home, they have to pass through the territories of these other gangs, and everyone is on the lookout for them because they think that they're the ones that killed Cyrus. So it kind of has that same feel, like you just have these different
amoebus
areas.
Locations.
Yeah. But the story is centered around this singer named Ellen Aim, played by Diane Lane.
At 16, 17 years old here.
So she fronts this band called Ellen Aim and the Attackers, and she's come back home to play a concert.
It's a benefit concert.
Yeah. And so the first song we hear is Nowhere Fast.
Oh, it's so good. All the music in this movie is so good.
Yeah, it's a good opener. And during the show, we first see Willem Dafoe. He kind of comes out of the shadows.
There's this really cool, like, silhouette thing where the light is behind him and all you can see is his hair. Because he has this, like, what was that called?
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, rockabilly stylings in this.
What's that hair? Is that a bouffant? What is that called?
Or like
when
a
they
pompadour?
Pompadour.
Yeah.
Like, he has this really distinct one that it's almost like Flock of Seagulls meets rockabilly. But the light comes up behind him, like right there. The light comes up behind him and it makes him look like he almost has like horns. Like, and it's very silhouetted. It's there. Okay. So there's a lot of cool lighting and filter techniques in this movie that I don't think get the attention that they deserve.
Yeah.
So like there's a ton of them right in that opening scene. Like you get all these cool neon lights behind them, and then they shut all the regular lights off, but the band is still performing.
Yeah.
And so all you can see is the outline of them against the neons. That's really cool too.
But you look at these pictures and you see a lot of, like, they have a greaser kind of style too. And then you get like Ellen's outfits and they look more like futuristic, like asymmetrical.
This is 19.
Like,
hold on, I gotta
clothing.
look. I gotta look something up because I just had a thought.
What?
So you keep going. I just thought something, and it's gonna really, if I'm right.
But this movie has a great cast as well. So we have Diane Lane, who plays Ellen, and then Michael Paré plays Tom Cody, and he was her, like, former boyfriend. And at this time, Michael Paré was kind of on the rise. He was previously Eddie in Eddie and the Cruisers.
Which, no more rock and roll career has there been.
Another great rock and roll movie. But this was his follow-up to Eddie and the Cruisers. But unfortunately, this movie did not do well at the box office, and it was written in mind for more movies about this character, Tom Cody, to come out.
Which would have been awesome.
They never happened.
Still possible, Hollywood. Figure it out.
But Michael Paré still acts. In the 90s, he was in this werewolf movie called Bad Moon. Most recently, he was in, like, the newest Puppet Master movie.
Was he in The Smallest Reich?
Yes. He was the cop.
So I just looked it up, and I was correct.
What?
Ellen Aim is the bassist for the Blaze character in the Streets of Rage video games.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because you can see, like, the Blaze, her jacket, and the red dress, it looks exactly the same.
So we have Diane Lane, Michael Paré, Rick Moranis plays Billy Fish, who is Ellen's boyfriend / manager. He's actually kind of a prick in this movie. He's not the beloved Rick Moranis.
This is a departure for him.
Yeah.
So, like, usually you see Rick Moranis in anything and you're like, aw, I love him.
Yeah.
But in this movie, you're like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's a real asshole. But I feel like casting Rick Moranis is perfect because, yeah, he is probably the most unlikable, and that I'm including Raven in this. He's probably the most unlikable character in the movie, but you still don't want to hate him because it's Rick Moranis.
Yeah. As we mentioned before, Willem Dafoe plays Raven.
Right there.
And then Lee Ving plays one of Raven's, like, henchmen.
His main guy, his right-hand man.
We also have Deborah Van... Oh, I can't remember her last name, but she was also in The Warriors.
Deborah Van Valkenburg.
Yeah. She, in The Warriors, is the girl that comes along with the Warriors, and her and the main warrior kind of start to develop romantic feelings. Amy Madigan in this movie plays McCoy. Her role was initially written for a male character, but she came in and auditioned. She really took to the role, and you can kind of tell it was written like for a guy, but
for a couple reasons.
Yeah. But Amy Madigan, I don't know what she's been in recently, but like in the 90s she was in The Dark Half. She's also married to Ed Harris in real life. Let's see, who else is in this? Bill Paxton shows up as Clyde the bartender.
He shows up a couple times.
Yeah. So yeah, like, E.G. Daly. I'd like to talk about E.G. Daly for a moment.
You talk about E.G. Daly all
because E.G. Daly, I love this woman, and I feel like she deserves more respect. And for people my age, she has had an impact on our childhood that you may not realize. So, sorry, I'm about to get into it.
No, get into it.
But E.G. Daly, her real name is Elizabeth Daly. This is her right here. She was in a lot of 80s movies. She was Dottie in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. She was in Valley Girl. That's how I knew of her as a kid. I used to watch Valley Girl all the time. She was in like this obscure horror movie called One Dark Night. She was in the Rod Stewart music video for Young Turks.
Whoa, that's weird. So, E.G. Daly was in a movie with the Blasters. E.G. Daly was in a movie called One Dark Night, and it was also in a movie with the Blasters whose biggest hit is called Dark Knight.
So, E.G. Daly is not only an actress, she's also a singer.
And voice actress.
Yes, which I'll get into that because it all kind of works together. But in Streets of Fire, she has a very small part. She plays Baby Doll. And because she has a singing background, she was kind of bummed out that she doesn't get to sing in this movie, and she wanted to contribute more. So Walter Hill actually wrote like more lines of dialogue for her, and because she's very likable and she has a screen presence, so he wrote her like extra dialogue and stuff like that just to give her more instead of just being like Ellen's #1 fan and being in the background. But so she was in movies throughout the 80s. She was a singer. If you've ever seen the movie Better Off Dead, she's the singer at the school dance. She sings that the Better Off Dead theme, the One Way Love. She has a song on the Breakfast Club soundtrack that I used to love when I was younger. So she's done a lot of music, and she was actually a contestant on The Voice in 2013.
E.G. Daly.
Yes,
was a contestant on The Voice?
Which is
for like, why?
It's like, why did she have to do that? More people should be aware of who she is already. She's had such an interesting career.
I also feel like it could have been just a fun like joke to play on the judges.
Maybe.
Like turning around and being like, oh my god.
But so when you hear her talk, she kind of, has this, like, higher-pitched voice. But when she sings, she has this nice, like, gravelly tone, like she's a good rock singer. But in the 90s, she started doing more, like, voice acting.
Yes, she did.
So she was Tommy Pickles on the Rugrats.
Yes.
She is also the voice of Buttercup in the Powerpuff Girls.
Yes.
She was the voice of Babe Babe, Pig in the City.
Yes.
The Little Rascals movie that came out in the 90s, she dubbed Froggy's voice.
Mm-hmm.
She also dubbed Bam Bam's voice in the Flintstones. She's done so much that, like, I grew up with it, people my age grew up with, that I don't think they know who she is, and she's had this, like, really interesting career. Nowadays, she mostly pops up in Rob Zombie movies. She was in The Devil's Rejects, and
31.
She was in 31. She played Sex Doll. I believe that was her name.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a petite lady, so, yeah, I just think more people should know who E.G. Daly is, and she should have more respect.
It also looks like she pops up in, not like, Disney level, but like not quite the mainstream animation currently. Like, she probably just does like for money voice work for smaller animated films now. Like,
she was on, I think, 1 or 2 episodes of Friends. She showed up as Phoebe's ex-singing partner who sold Smelly Cat in a commercial. But yeah, like, most recently, like, she's done voices for Wreck-It Ralph and Happy Feet. She's still very active. You can look up videos on YouTube, too. Like, she does, like, voice acting lessons and stuff like that.
Also,
very interesting lady.
Hilarious TikTok channel.
I didn't know she has one.
Her and her daughter share one. Yep.
But yeah, E.G. Daly. And maybe one day we can do a John Waters movie and I can gush about Rachel Sweet. But, yeah, so I like to talk about...
Maybe someday we'll do something where I get to talk about Tara Strong also.
Yes, which, of course, E.G. Daly and Tara Strong work together a lot. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, thank you for listening to my tangent. I just think...
Thank you for joining my TED Talk.
I've always been a big fan of E.G. Daly, and I feel like more people should be aware of who she is and her contributions to cinema and voice acting and music.
So we do need to move on to our next person, which would probably be Richard Lawson, who plays, what's his name? Yeah, Officer Price.
Ed? Was his name Ed?
Yeah, well, Ed. Yeah, Ed's his first name, but Officer Price, the main police officer of the movie.
Yeah.
Because he's a central part. This is almost like a Romeo and Juliet thing that goes on over the course of the movie, where the cops are like, don't do it again or you'll all get kicked out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want the cops to get involved with this. And he is the voice of the police that we hear throughout the film, which in 1984, having a strong, positively portrayed black police officer was probably not something very many movies did.
So Ellen gets kidnapped during her show, and Reva Cody, played by Deborah from The Warriors, is at the show, and so she knows that, like, she needs to tell Tom because of his past with Ellen, and everyone knows he had strong feelings for her, but he's not the type of person that will admit it.
It was probably one of those things where they were together, but they were never really, like, official. Like, everybody knew they were together, but they were never officially a couple.
Because he explains that she is someone that always wanted to, like, move on and, you know, move up and always wanted to get away.
And he had never felt like he could do that.
Yeah. So Tom comes back to town and he goes to Reva's diner.
Which one of my notes that says, because we talked about this the first time I saw it, I was like, that diner is specifically made, like, the outside of it is made to kind of remind you of, what's it called, Night Vultures, the painting.
Oh gosh. I love that painting.
Yeah, there's a famous painting, and I believe it's called Night Vultures. Or
it's
Nighthawks.
Nighthawks, I believe.
And it's like this old style 50s diner with a couple cars parked outside, and it's a really simplistic.
Like you're on the outside looking in, like there's a diner and you just see a few people sitting inside the diner, but just the colors and everything.
And I feel like
realism.
the diner in this film is made to look like that. Like, specifically on purpose.
So, he's kind of sitting there just drinking coffee, waiting for Reva to notice him. And then she does, and of course, like, this small gang of guys come in, and they're kind of harassing Reva. But she can hold her own. She's... talking back to them and...
Until it gets violent.
Yeah.
So there's apparently multiple gangs in the city. Mm-hmm. The biggest and scariest one is the Bombers, and then there are like just little smaller gangs. These guys are called the Roadmasters. Mm-hmm. And there's a part in this movie that really surprised me the first time we watched it, and it's where Michael Pare stands up out of his diner stool. And the main, like, Roadmaster gang member goes from eye height with him to looking at his chest. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's no way Michael Pare is really that big. And we looked it up, and he's actually huge.
Yeah.
Like, his arms are big in this. He's got, like, an army body. Like, it's not ripped up, but you can tell that he's muscular. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's really, like, physically intimidating in this movie.
So, yeah, he starts fighting these guys off, and then he literally throws all of them out the window.
The fight scene is great.
Yeah.
And I want to, as somebody who really studies the science of action films, I need to let you know that some of the stuff that goes on in this scene is great. Because the guy flips out a Filipino, which is what would most people call it? Butterfly knife. Mm-hmm. And he kind of does a couple little tricks, and then the blade comes out. And Cody takes his hand, goes backwards, closes it back up, and hands it back to him, says, try again, kid. Mm-hmm. And then, once he takes the knife away the second time, he doesn't punch the guy. He bitch smacks him about 4 or 5 times open-handed before the guy backs up, and it's kind of funny. He's just like, and like, the other guys are just standing there watching, like, what is happening? And then he literally physically throws them all out of the window.
Yeah. So then
they run away and
so then Reva starts telling Tom, like, hey, Alan was taken, and because they're driving in the car that he stole. And,
they run away and leave the car.
And he's kind of acting like he doesn't care. Well, first he's like, how did that even happen? Like, he doesn't believe it could have happened, but so then he drops her back off, and she's like, oh, why don't you sell that car and buy me a new window? Because he threw all those guys out her diner window. So he goes to another bar, and this is where we see Bill Paxton as Clyde the bartender.
Well, before that, while he's driving around with Reva, he's having fun. He's joyriding this car, so he's driving real fast.
Oh, this is where they get...
Right, and they get pulled over by Officer Price, and I forget the other officer's name, but he's just kind of the second officer.
Yeah.
And there's a whole conversation... Hold on, dog's scratching himself. Okay, I got it. There's a whole conversation about, don't you start trouble. You're back in town, and they, like, the two cops have a conversation about how when Tom was younger... He was always in trouble. He was always... Oh, thanks, dog.
Aww.
Oh, that's why we didn't see it. It's only on the...
Oh. Wait, nothing is showing up on that, though. That's really weird.
Yeah. Well, thank you, dog. We appreciate you coming.
Hi,
Doug. So, we find out that as a young guy, he was a lot of trouble. That Cody was a lot of trouble, and he went off. Eventually, we find out other things about him, but that this Officer Price had dealt with him a lot when in his young years. Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to this other bar, and we meet Clyde the bartender, who's played by Bill Paxton. And he orders tequila, and then this is where we're introduced to Mccoy, because she's just sitting there and she's getting impatient with Clyde because he hasn't tended to her yet, and she's just out of the army and stuff. She's between jobs, and this is where we first hear about the districts, because she's talking about how she's just passing through this district, but she punches out Clyde, and then she jumps behind the counter, and she gets Tom the
We also need to point out that earlier in the movie, during the kidnapping scene in the concert, Clyde also gets knocked out in that scene. So Lee Ving's character Greer, he runs up to him and he goes, "Hey, you can't do this!" And he just, which in the special features that we watched, Bill Paxton said Lee Ving he really punched him in the gut hard.
Yeah.
So that it seems like every scene that the Clyde character is in, he gets knocked out.
Yeah. So McCoy and Tom leave together. It's not romantic though, because right off the bat, McCoy asks him if he has an extra bed because she doesn't have a place to stay, and he's like, "Oh, you really want to like jump right to the tumble?" And she's like, "You're not my type." And this is where it kind of implies that maybe she doesn't like men.
Which and it happened. It's non-explicit references throughout the movie.
Yeah, but so she goes to stay there because she needs money and hotels cost money. So they go to Tom and Reva's house, and she sleeps on the couch and she has her gun because she takes her gun with her everywhere. And they kind of talk about how they're both soldiers and Tom has been out of the army for a few months now.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, McCoy just got out, and Tom's been out for a little while.
Yeah, and so Tom goes up to his room, and he's looking through his wallet, and this is, again, with the time period, because he has a picture of Ellen in his wallet, but it looks like a very old, like, glamour kind of photo.
Yeah,
like
it almost looks
black
like
and
the
white.
30s.
Yeah, it looks very old-fashioned, and then he gets like a sudden, this is where we get a snippet of the Never Be You song.
Which, this is one of the filter techniques I referred to earlier also, is when when they're doing this Never Be You song, it's all very fuzzy. It looks like a black and white film.
Yeah.
It adds a lot of graininess and
it's so, like, thinking now, like, just Ellen's fashion, how her fashion is more like futuristic. It's like she really represents, like, I've moved on from this town. Like, everyone that stayed behind, they look more like
1940s.
Yeah. They're stuck in this style, whereas she's dressed in, like, these, like, odd, like, it's
almost like, not leather, but it's, like, almost futuristic from what people in the past thought futuristic would look like.
Yeah, she looks like no one else in town, or even, like, the way she styles her hair and stuff like that. She looks the most, like, modern out of anyone else in the movie.
Definitely.
So I feel like that's a way of showing through, like, her costume design and stuff, that she's, you know, she's not just stuck in this place. Like, she's moved on and she's kind of looking like this world maybe outside of this district. So he gets this, like, kind of image of her singing, and we realize, like, he still has feelings for her, and he decides he'll help out. So he goes to Reva's room and tells her to, like, organize a meeting with Billy Fish, because, like, if he can get Billy to pay him, he'll go after Ellen and bring her back home.
And there's a good bit here where he goes, "Hey, there's a girl on the couch. You know, when you get up, just make sure there's enough coffee for 2 people." And Reva goes, "Why is she on the couch?" And he goes, "You ask her." And it's great. Like, he's tired. He doesn't want to talk about that anymore. Like, he's like, "You'll get it. You talk to her." And then he sets up the Billy Fish.
Yeah, so while in the morning, McCoy and Reva are leaving, and they're kind of talking about Tom and how he has these feelings for Ellen, but he's never, like, admitted how he actually felt about her, and how he's never done well with women, and how McCoy is the first woman he's brought home that slept on the couch. Like, that kind of thing. And simultaneously, Tom goes to visit his friend Pete, and this is where he's getting, like, his weapons.
Which I want to point out that all these guns that he buys, these particular ones that we only see Tom Cody buy, none of them are real. They're all kind of customized fabrications of things that really exist, but none of them are real. Like, I couldn't look... So you have this rifle right here that looks just like... If you saw it in black and white, you'd be like, oh, that's a Henry. But then you see it in color and you realize that it has 2 stock bands and it's silver and it's like a red wood. So that's not a Henry and it's not a Marlin. It doesn't look like anything else you'll see in real life. It's a custom-made machine. And then you also see this pistol that he get, this revolver pistol, which looks like a Winchester 45 mag or a Smith & Wesson 45 mag, but the cylinder on it is like the size of his hand. And like it's probably like a 50 cal revolver, and they especially in the 80s probably didn't really exist unless they were custom made. So that's another thing in this movie that's like, it looks like it belongs, but it's not real.
Yeah, it's like a world of it. That's why I love this movie so much. It's like so much imagination was put into that. Like, it really, I don't know.
And that's
it's
why
like
I feel
escaping
like...
to this world where anything is possible. Like, you can make your own rules, like, for movie making. Like, I've always been kind of inspired by this movie in that way. Same with the Warriors, too. They have, like, that same kind of, like, this weird dystopian kind of feel, but, like, a merging of the modern and the past, and really anything is possible.
What I also like about this film is that it's correct in saying, so it just in agreeing with you, the term rock and roll fable, because it is a fairy tale.
Yeah,
it's a fairy tale, and it's told through the lens of time. It's told through the lens of culture through time. So instead of this like fairyland world, it's told through these two cultures of the 1940s and 50s and the 80s kind of intermingling, and it takes a lot of know-how of how the two are similar and different to really make this film work. And I feel like Walter Hill just walked that line so perfectly.
Because it's like, it's gritty, and then the music is just so like epic and beautiful and
it's gorgeous.
Just the balance of everything.
And also, with all the gunplay that goes on with this movie, nobody dies.
Yeah. Like,
there's a ton of gunplay in this movie. There's a lot of shooting going on. Nobody explicitly dies.
Well, there is a scene where, this next scene that we'll be talking about, where McCoy does shoot someone during the card game. Oh, okay, I wasn't sure.
She shoots him, and that's why the line after she shoots the guy in the knee, she says, "Next one's in the nuts, big guy," is because she's moving up the leg.
But yeah. So Tom goes to meet Billy Fish, and he says, "I'll go get Ellen for $10,000," and McCoy, because they're back at Reva's diner, and McCoy is overhearing because McCoy really wants a job too, and she's like, "Why don't you let me help you for a cut? I could really use some money." And Billy, this is where Billy, like, you're really seeing him as this unlikable character because he's very disrespectful to McCoy. He keeps referring to her as like a skirt
or a broad,
or he calls her a butch at one point. He's being very rude to both of them because he thinks he's better than all of them. And so,
which there's a good line there where McCoy says, "I don't know." What is it? I don't know what's worse, your attitude or your fashion sense or something like that. Like, she like really hands it to him over the course of this tweed suit.
Yeah. So we know that Ellen is at this place called the Battery, and
so it's a district.
Initially, Billy is refusing to go back there because, like, he used to, like, go there. Maybe that's where he's from. I don't remember, but he's like, I've had enough with that. I don't need to go back there.
Earlier in the movie, they say that that's where he's from, and that's where he discovered Ellen, and they worked their way up out of the
because he used to book a lot of bands at this bar called Torchy's. So, but eventually Tom is like, well, we're going to need you because you know that area, you know how to get around. And so Tom, McCoy, and Billy drive to the Battery, and Billy tells them where they can hide. They can go hide, like, under this bridge. And so they do, and they turn off the lights, and we see, like, all the motorcycles and everything. And then they start walking around, and then we get a surprise appearance by Ed Begley.
Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah.
He kind of comes out of nowhere. They're sneaking up around the side of the building.
Yeah.
They're, like, on the roof of the opposite side of the street. Mm-hmm. And Ed Begley Jr. just kind of walks out of the shadows as a homeless, like, an unhomed person.
Yeah.
And he just starts giving them all the information that they want, and that's where Cody turns to Fish, and he goes, "Pay the man." And he's like, "I'm not going to pay him, you pay him." And he's like, "No, you're going to pay him, or I'm going to take your money and pay him for you."
Because it's like everyone in this district knows that Ellen Aim is there, and he knows it, and he's like, "You're here to get that girl, aren't you? Otherwise you wouldn't be sneaking up in this dark alley with a bunch of guns." And he's like, "She's at Torchy's on the second floor." And then even before this scene, we do get a scene of Ellen is at Torchy's, and Raven comes in. He has her tied up on the bed.
It's a very uncomfortable scene. He's super, like, sexually assaulting her.
Yeah.
And it's tough to watch, but it really establishes how much of a piece of shit this character is.
Yeah, he basically tells her, like, "Oh, you can stay here and we can fall in love for a week or two, and then I'll let you go." But he just has her, like, tied up in this bed, and then he keeps, like, advancing on her. So, they approach the building, they get closer to Torchy's, and Tom tells Billy to go back to the car and to come back with the car, like, in 15 minutes, like, to meet them at the front so that they can make their getaway. And so Tom stays outside. He's kind of staking the buildings because he's going to start shooting these motorcycles. He's not harming, like, he's not shooting the people. He's shooting their bikes. And McCoy goes inside, and there's this guy that's kind of...
Before we get to that, before she gets inside, we see the performance of the Blasters.
Oh, yeah.
Covering
the Blasters,
One Bad Stud.
Yeah, the Blasters are performing, and there's this woman dancing.
Where's my note on that? Hold on. I had a note. Okay. Go ahead.
So, yeah, as I had mentioned earlier, Walter Hill had wanted the Blasters to perform in 48 hours, but they declined. But then he brought them back on, like, they accepted the appearance for this movie. So they do perform 2 songs in Torchy's.
The first one, One Bad Stud, is an
Stud.
Awesome song.
Yeah.
I love this song so much. It was originally performed in 1954 by a band called the Honey Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the Blasters were this really cool, actually kind of really representative of this film, because they're a 1980s band that are known for 80s music, but they played, like, 50s style music.
Mm-hmm. And so they play One Bad Stud, and then the second song they perform is Blue Shadows.
Which is another cool-ass song.
So McCoy is in there, and there's this, one of the bomber guys is kind of hitting on her, so she's pretending, and he takes her to another room, and she holds him up and then knocks him out. And so the guy, before they went off, she sees Raven, and she starts to go after him, and he's like, no, like, he's going to the card game. So she ends up going in there, and she pulls out her gun, and Willem Dafoe is
he doesn't... Okay, so you'd think if they're gonna have, like, a mob boss getting... Or, like, gang boss getting robbed at a poker game, that he'd kind of be mad or something. Willem Dafoe makes this face like he's very interested. Okay, so somebody just broke into our card game with a gun. Let's see where this goes. Like, he's very interested. He, like, looks at her with his head tilted, like, huh, you, all right, well, let's see how far you get.
It's like Raven thrives on the chaos.
Oh, yeah.
So McCoy is in there, kind of, she has her gun pointed at them, and, Raven's like, well, you're not here to rob us.
No, he says, I don't think... it's Greer that says, I don't care how much of this money you take, you're not getting out of the battery with it. And she says, I'm not here for the money. And he goes, no, you're not, are you?
Yeah. So Tom is, like, on the top of this building, and he looks, and he can see Ellen in one of the windows. Like, he can see her tied up in the bed. So now he knows where she is, so he starts, like, shooting the motorcycles.
There's some pretty cool stunts here. There's some pretty cool jump-off stunts.
Yeah, and so while McCoy is holding up the card game, he goes back in the building and he unties Ellen, which he does his knife trick again. And I think he throws it, right?
No, he, like, jumps forward, and he, like, she gets scared because he's, like, falling with the knife, and he takes the rope off.
Yeah. So, then McCoy sees them, so she runs out, and they're, like, escaping from the building, and then Billy comes driving up, and they all, like... Well, those three take off, but Tom is like, well, meet me at this underpass.
When he's telling them to leave... Ellen's face is great because she's like, "What? No!" Like you see the concern for Cody in Ellen's face when he's like, "Oh no, you guys go. I have this planned out. Meet me at this underpass." And she's like she has this very like we haven't gotten very much of her character at all, but you can tell that she's worried for Tom. And
plus, it seems like she's still in shock at seeing him because she never expected to see him.
Yep.
So Tom is just like, well, meet me at this, like, underpass, and...
It doesn't exist.
He starts, like, going around doing more fighting, and then he shoots this, like, gas pump.
Well, it's the old-style gas pumps that have, like, glass containers up on the top that fill up. That way the gas can flow down. They weren't, like, pressurized. So, he breaks those glass things, and it falls through the street, and then he lights those. Doesn't he throw a cigarette or something and lights them on fire?
I thought he just shoots it.
Oh, okay. So, but anyway,
I don't think he smokes at all
But then the whole street fills up with fire, and this is where we get just one of the coolest shots of the whole movie. Oh, I love it so much. So, the whole, like, beginning portion of the movie here, Raven has just been wearing... those overalls, like, with no shirt, but the pants on him are, like, shiny patent leather. And he comes out into this alleyway, this burning alleyway with this black patent leather, and it's doing this really cool, like, lighting, shiny thing, and he's walking very menacingly. Dafoe is big in this movie. He's got big shoulders, he's got big arms, and he's doing this real cool, like... He's smiling.
Yeah, because Tom is about to get on a bike, and then he just comes, like, out of the flames, and he's basically, like, he's more entertained, like, by Tom Cody. He's like, I'm, like, what is your name? And he's like, you won't get away, like, and Tom is like, well, I've got the gun, you forgot that, and he's like, I can get plenty of guns, like, you're
that's
dumb.
Not what matters.
He's like, you're dumb for thinking you can get away with this, and then Raven is just like, I'll be coming for her, and I'll be coming for you, too. Like, he's no sense of urgency or anything. It's like he knows, like it's gonna be fun for him.
He's
like,
almost talking like,
them.
Thank you for giving me something new to do.
Yeah.
Like, he's almost like, you know what, I appreciate you trying this because it lets me do something. Like, good for you.
Yeah. And so Tom meets back up with the others, and that is where we are leaving off for this week.
Yeah, because that was going to be about, what's his name? Pare riding that motorcycle. And the behind-the-scenes story behind it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, basically Michael Paré showed up to set and he had never ridden.
But he told him he did. He told him he knew how to drive a 3-in-the-tree stick, and he told him he knew how to ride a motorcycle, and he didn't know either. So he actually we'll start on that scene next week, but there's this really cool like compilation shot of him riding this motorcycle, and he had actually like completely blown a motor on one of the motorcycles because he was shifting really badly.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll come back.
That's the beginning of Streets of Fire.
Week. Let me see, what is our schedule? Because I forgot what our other segments are going to be.
I did too. So next week is I know it's the end of Streets of Fire. We're only doing 2 episodes on this because the week after that is our Christmas special!
Alright, so for next week, our Seen Again movie. This is a movie I have not seen since it first came out. Mystery Men.
Ooh. I have it memorized though.
I don't remember anything about this. I just remember Janine Garofalo has like a bowling ball with her dad's skull.
Pre-fame Dane Cook in a very quick... So you got Kel. Mm-hmm. You got... Paul Rubens. Mm-hmm. You got Hank Azaria.
Yeah.
William H. Macy, Janine Garofalo, Ben Stiller, Eddie Izzard. Oh shoot, I'm trying to think of who plays the bad guy because he's another like whenever you see like Hank Azaria and William H. Macy, that guy's around too, and I can't think of his name.
I have no idea because I don't remember.
But like I have this movie memorized. I remember all of it. I watched it a ton when I was a kid because I thought it was like the best movie. It's so funny.
Yeah, maybe that Smash Mouth song ruined it for me. I don't know.
Which is funny because the Smash Mouth song was originally for that and not those trash Shrek movies. They originally had made that song for Mystery Men. And then the Shrek people offered them more money. So they just like, yeah, sure, we're whores.
And then for themes to be heard...
Who threw that bread?
I don't remember which one, but we're doing a Linkin Park video. Do you remember which one?
Yeah. I do. Hold on.
Well, I'm glad for that.
Shh. I do remember. I remember which one it was. Hold on. I'll edit this out.
So, yeah, we only have 2 more episodes for this season.
3, because the Christmas special.
Yeah, well, this is 2
more after the... Okay, it's Linkin Park's Breaking the Habit.
Oh, okay.
Which was drawn by their DJ, Mr. Han.
Okay.
And have you ever seen that video?
Yes.
It's another one where you're like, this video has no business being a music video. Like, this is way too entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, our Christmas... Are we saying what the Christmas special is?
We can. So, we've got 2 episodes left this season. We've got next week where we'll continue and conclude talking about Streets of Fire. We'll talk about Mystery Men. We'll talk about Linkin Park's Breaking the Habit video. And then... the following week will be our Christmas special where we'll be talking about The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Which is a Christmas movie. I don't care what Die Hard's a Christmas movie. No. Die Hard's a movie that takes place on Christmas. There are so many things that could not happen on any other night than happen on The Long Kiss Goodnight. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in that movie that could not happen on any night other than Christmas.
So you don't think Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
I don't. I think Die Hard is a movie that happens on Christmas. And it represents the holiday well. But I don't think that... Like, if you took Die Hard and put it on the 4th of July, it would still work.
Well, yeah.
If you took
but
the long...
you have an ugly Die Hard Christmas sweater.
Uh-huh. And it's fantastic. And I'm going to wear it again this year. Didn't I wear it on our Christmas special last year?
We didn't have a Christmas special last year.
Yes, we did.
What did we talk about?
I don't remember. Did we do a
Because
haul? No, we did. We did a haul.
No, we didn't.
We did.
What?
We did a haul.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember doing, like, we did a live stream of a haul, and I was wearing my Christmas, because we had already taken the table out. I feel like we were sitting on the floor down here when we did it.
We took photos of us and Dyson, but we didn't make a video.
We did. I promise you, we did a video last Christmas. I know we did.
This is quality entertainment.
It's the point of the show. All right.
All right.
So, until next week. What was my sign off? Oh! Adopt, don't shop.
Think pink and have a